Tell someone what you believe, and their response will reveal what they believe. Before I go any farther with this video essay, I want to go ahead and make a request of those of you who watch it, particularly those of you who are subscribed to my channel. I decided to take a look to see what my subscriber count was. I'm not really concerned with subscriber numbers. It's not like I sit there and obsess over them, and a lot of people are disappointed, but I need to get something on the table here. If you are one of my subscribers and you didn't like what it was that I said in my Black Panther video yesterday, if you're one of the people who perhaps found that you got blocked, please do me the favor of unsubscribing from my channel. I do not want people here who have decided that they're going to take refuge inside of a fictional world and that they're going to fly off their nut and lose their minds because I simply make a point of fact. I want the people who do not like what I said and had a problem with it, a serious problem with it, I want you to unsubscribe. In fact, I'm demanding that you do so. If I had the ability to unsubscribe you myself, I would. Now, that said, let's go ahead and rain some more hell on your make-believe world. Because I guess it says a lot about black people's collective immaturity that this one small thing that we all should be able to agree upon has become so rancorous and divisive. There are a whole lot of idiots out there who are trying to do their impersonations of what they think a smart person might sound like, speaking on things they don't have the first clue on. The first line that these idiots use is, well, the Black Panther movie, it was written by a black man, wasn't it? So this was all black people's ideas. Let me tell you something stupid. What's going on in Marvel is being completely run by Kevin Feige and the guy who runs Disney. Marvel has their plan, a blueprint laid out. You don't get to write whatever the hell you want. They tell you what it is that they want, and whatever script you give them has to comply to whatever their particular outline is. See, a lot of idiots don't actually know anything about the movie business. All they know about movies is how to watch them. And based on how brainlessly they follow this Black Panther thing, they can't even get that right. But the way that movies work is like this. You Negro nerds, black geeks, you need to pay attention especially. Let's say that you have a movie that starts with a producer. Most movies do start with the producers. They start with the studio executives. If you have a producer like Jerry Bruckheimer, he decides that because Disney or some other studio wanted him to take a look at how to boost attendance at one of their theme parks. So they were like, hey, Jerry, you make some movies. Which one of our rides do you think has the most movie potential? Because we're trying to boost attendance for these rides. Jerry looks and goes, Magic Mountain? Nah. Back to the Future? Nah, been there, done that. Hey, what's this pirates thing? Everybody likes pirates. Kids like pirates, right? Jerry Bruckheimer then is tasked with finding people to make it. So he gets Gore Verbinski to be the director, and he gets Chris Terrio to be the writer. They don't come and say, we're going to write a movie about pirates. Jerry Bruckheimer went to them after Disney or whomever the studio is that made Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't care because I don't watch it. That's how movies get made most of the time. The idea of a screenwriter coming to a studio and saying, here's my script, my on-spec, you didn't ask for it, but you're getting it anyway, that almost never works. Studios go and get the writers and tell them, this is what we want you to write. And when the writer brings them one draft after the other, the studio will give them some notes. That's what it's called in the business. For a lot of you idiots who are talking, saying, oh, they got to write whatever they want. No, you write what the studio tells you. And when you give them a draft, they give you notes telling you, now this is what we want you to change. You have no idea how many drafts that movie went through before they finally got to what was shot. And you also don't know what the studio notes were. You're making assumptions on something you don't know. But then again, that's been the template, that's been the habit, the practice of all these Negro nerds and their fellow travelers. You don't actually know anything about how movies get made, but damn if you wish you did. So no, the guys who wrote it didn't get to actually write anything. Marvel has their phase 1. What the hell do you think phase 1 means, stupid? Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3? That's what they're going into now, phase 3. leading up to the Infinity War, what the hell do you think that means? You think that means that, oh, we just take whatever the writers bring us? No, what it means is they got a plan, they got an outline, and that they're not deviating from it. And whoever comes in that door calling themselves working on the project, you better be with whatever their game plan is, because they're not letting you make any changes to it. That's what some of the problems that some of the people who were working on it previously had. As far as they were concerned, Marvel wasn't allowing for any creative freedom. Well, why would they? They've already got their plan laid out. They don't want creative freedom. They want people who are going to do as they're told. Be a widget, be a cog in Marvel's creative machine. So for all you clowns out there saying, well, but it has black writers and a black director. They're employees of the white studio, stupid. This is a level of mentality that we're dealing with here, and you wonder why it is that the white media manipulates black people so easily, because most black people can't be bothered to think, but damn if they won't run their mouths. A freaking comic book character that you didn't create, that you had no hand in the production of, and yet you're willing to go to war over that. The white media's job is to make people into sheep. Considering the fact that most people don't think to begin with, this becomes a far easier task. You're a mindless herd doing what you're told, focusing on what the white powers that be direct you to. You're not thinking, you're only consuming, like a sheep munching grass. You figure because you call yourself a particular religion, or a particular political party, or you brag about whatever made-up science fiction, comic book, fantasy, whatever that you like, or even that you're black first, you figure that that means you're not a sheep too? Or you think that you're better than some of those other sheep over there. Let me tell you something. Just because you don't like some of the other sheep in the herd doesn't mean you aren't all going to the same slaughterhouse. Tariq Nasheed has often said that black people don't want to actually fight white supremacy. In fact, they don't even want to resist or criticize it. What they want is for somebody to give them a tidy little one-sentence remedy to white supremacy, as long as it doesn't require them to actually have to do anything. That way they can go back to what they really want, which is to goof off full-time. And seeing how people reacted to my Black Panther criticism video has proven Tariq Nasheed right in spades. Now, you would have thought that I urinated on somebody's mother's house by the way many of you responded. See, this is the kind of behavior that gives geeks a bad name. Emotional instability, psychological immaturity, a total lack of logic, and you take fiction seriously. Perhaps I need to explain my position, and it will clear some things up for some of you. For starters, I'm probably older than most of my subscribers, admittedly. I'm a Gen Xer. I remember what the world was before the internet, back when the Cold War was still a thing. I was raised to enjoy TV, books, and video games, but I wasn't raised to invest in them unless I was the one that produced them. And since I hadn't produced any TV shows, comic books, or video games, I didn't invest in them. That was important because it gave me the ability to actually see and understand what it was that I was playing or reading or watching. It helped to make sure that I didn't become a zombie. By the way, speaking of zombies, since you guys love Black Panther so much, you know that that's one of Marvel's favorite little expressions, Marvel zombies? Gotta give them credit. It's truth in advertising. See, I have the ability to watch a TV show. I think I've probably mentioned that Deadwood was a show that I actually liked. I could watch some movies. One of the movies that I actually think pretty highly of is The Game by David Fincher. I can read books. I think I told you about how I read some of James Ellroy's stuff and then stopped reading it. But you see, I don't read these things so that I can become fanatical over it. Now, yesterday, I think it was, or probably earlier today, Mr. Superboy223, he made a video talking about Black Panther. And one of the things that he was pointing out was you can be a fan of something without being a fanatic. And some of you, a lot of you, have crossed the line. In fact, I don't think you even were aware that there was a line to be crossed. I analyze every bit of media that I take in, no matter what the source may be. I don't allow the white media to dictate to me what I should get happy about. I get happy about things that enhance my power, things that I generated, things that are mine, not something that belongs to somebody else, especially someone who doesn't have my interest at heart and isn't doing anything that's in my interests. See, once you start to psychologically invest in the media that you consume, you start to get certain ideas, bad ideas. You know, like, it's just a movie. You actually have people in my comment section on my channel who actually have the nerve to say that expression. Now, whenever white people use that expression, we castigate them for it, and rightly so. But when we want to make an excuse because we want to patronize something, because it's flashy CGI on it, or it's an upcoming blockbuster, then we start talking the same way? Now, what part of the game is that? You want to go see your stupid comic book movies, you go ahead and you do that. But when I go ahead and point out some of the warts and all on it, instead of you bitching and complaining like a pig stuck under a gate, you need to ask if maybe the brother's got a point. 'Cause it's funny, though not in a ha-ha kind of way. I would have hoped that I'd proven myself to be accurate, tried and true, indeed prescient on the issues, that I had some measure of foresight. I hope that I had proven to the people who claim that they subscribe to my channel and actually value what it is that I do. I hope that I have proven my ability to see events before they arrived and to tell you who is doing what and how they do it. I was hoping that would have meant that you would trust my judgment. I thought that counted for something with many of you, and I see that I was wrong. A trailer to a movie created by a studio founded by a man who declared his hatred for black people, that meant more to you than the word of a black man who merely told you to see the crap that was going on right in front of you. Too many of you are like children who complain because someone tells you that Santa Claus isn't real. My analysis had previously always been welcomed by you, but now that I've dared to impose upon your playtime, you got the nerve to get mad at me. You came to the wrong dang place with that kind of behavior. The unsubscribe button is right in front of you. The same button that you use to subscribe to my channel will help you to unsubscribe. The same people who any other time would be happily joining me in excoriating any white media presentation that showed black people with plate lips and grass skirts, now these same folks are eagerly awaiting a movie that does these things. Because now the plate lips and grass skirts are attached to a comic book property that you like. Nah, it's time to go ahead and be really serious here. It's not the Black Panther movie that you like. It never is. If you liked the idea of black people being shown as stereotypes, hell, you could have been tripping all over yourselves from Medea. Perhaps if Tyler Perry had, instead of wearing a cotton skirt, if he wore a grass skirt, and instead of a gray wig, if he wore a plate lip, maybe you'd enjoy that. See, the reason that you're getting all hot and bothered over Black Panther is because of the company that he keeps, literally and figuratively. It's the tidal wave of popularity of Marvel Studios that mainly interests you. That's the part that you're digging so much. Right now, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the biggest thing in media. So naturally, you relish the opportunity to be a part of it, if only vicariously. See, if this Black Panther movie had come out 10 years ago before Iron Man, you'd be furious with it. You would have said, man, it's just like those racists in Hollywood. You got to do a Black Panther movie, but we got to have grass skirts and plate lips and spears all over the place. You would have had a problem with it. You would have said, man, they took Black Panther and just totally screwed it up. But since you see all these white comic book characters taking over the movie industry, you want to see a black character who you can vicariously live through and say, well, I'm a part of it through this guy. He's a stand-in for me. That's what you mean when you call this movie important. It's part of a media enterprise that's important to the dominant society. That's what you really mean. And in the process, you have now gone on the record giving the white media license to use the most grotesque stereotype against you. I told you years and years ago that the black denigration porn that was getting kicked off with Precious was going to be just the tip of the iceberg. It was going to be merely the first ripple of a tsunami of black denigration movies and media. And history proved me right. Now, you didn't have a problem with it when I was pointing it out before. That's because you're not emotionally attached to Quentin Tarantino or Lee Daniels. But I also told you that at some point the comic books were going to decide to bring you in for some abuse. And a lot of you claimed that you had a problem with that. Well, you're right. If they tried that, we're going to go in. But the second that it actually happens, now it's time to see if you'll put some steel behind your words. All of a sudden, it's just a movie. You have gone on the record telling the white media that the mess that they do is okay with you now. You use their talking points, you defend the garbage that they put out, and just as the people who defended Precious and took up for Tyler Perry, they were the ones who paved the way for just the growing tidal wave of anti-black imagery coming out of Tinseltown. You have now set a brand new low. You did this. You yourselves have said repeatedly on this channel, my channel, the house that Truth built, that, well, grass skirts and plate lips, well, it's true, isn't it? And the worst part is that these are not even white people's sock puppet accounts. These are people who I know for a fact happen to be black people, and this is what they've said. Amazing. All it took was just one pat on the head, and white supremacy's got you singing their tune. How's that feel? Well, I suppose I should ask if you have any thoughts that go through your head after this. When I told you that I only see media as good for one thing, and that is to promote a value system that forwards our power, that's exactly what I meant. And my analysis and appraisal of media in that regard never stops. Doesn't matter if it's the nightly news, a magazine article, a news piece on the radio, a government study, or some comic book movie. If it's in print or electronic media, I am not consuming it, I am examining it. Whether what the white media is presenting to me is necessarily true or not is of far less importance to me than whether or not it can be made of use to me or not. Dr. John Henrik Clarke said it, and a lot of you clearly missed it. Anything that you are a part of is supposed to serve your power. Doesn't matter if it's a political party or a whisk club. Well, that goes triple for media. Now look, if you merely watch some TV or read some comics or play some video games, that's one thing. A lot of you tried to make it sound like, oh, he said that you shouldn't watch anything that white people had any hand in any shape, form, or fashion. Well, hell, if that was the case, under white supremacy, you couldn't have anything. They dominate all arenas of the society. So stop playing stupid and setting up straw man arguments. You know what the hell I really said, and the problem is I told you to grow up. That's what you really hate. So because of the fact you couldn't refute what I said, you decided that you were going to refute something that I didn't say. Look at the irrational, hysterical, and infantile responses that my video received. These are not people who look at comics or movies as being just mere diversion or just some, flimsy escapist fun. These people are seriously invested in this stuff, and they don't see the problem in that. The more you point out the problems with their preoccupation with escapist fantasy, the more angry they get. And that's what's really going on here. Being black hurts. It is excruciating under white supremacy, and black people are looking for any form of escape. Heroin, crack, alcohol, sex, media, comic books, movies, video games, just something to get my mind off the pain for a little bit. Something that I can escape into. And now you've become like a junkie who somebody has been so inconsiderate as to take their crack pipe away, or worse than that, a junkie who someone was so impolite as to actually call a junkie. You're not using these comics are now using you. When you defend imagery that degrades you, and you celebrate it and say that it's all true, and you attack the people who point out what's wrong with it, you have become part of the problem. A lot of you have gotten some straw men that you propped up to hide behind so you don't actually have to deal with what I actually said. Nobody told you don't go see this Black Panther movie. Nobody told you to stop reading comic books or to stop watching TV shows or stop playing video games. What I said was you better be realistic about the media you consume, and more importantly, you need to be honest about the people who present that media to you. But of course that would get in the way of your fun, now wouldn't it? Well, let me go ahead and throw some more cold water on you. Let's look at comic books for just a second. Chris Claremont. This was the man who was most responsible for making X-Men the industry standard for comic books. He didn't create X-Men, but when he took over that title, he made it his own. And he turned X-Men into not just the standard bearer for Marvel, but he also turned it into the paradigm that pretty much all of the comic books were desperate to follow. And for 15 years, Chris Claremont made X-Men the most important title in comic book publishing. But in that 15 years, Chris Claremont never saw fit to have more than one black person in the X-Men, Storm. It wasn't until after Claremont quit that Bishop was created by Will Spertatio. Now, there's also a well-known comic book writer, Chuck Dixon. He's a right-wing conservative, and in recent years, he has become very vocal about this. He's put his right-wing credentials on full display. Now, Chuck Dixon is well known for having written a lot of comic book stories. He was the guy who launched the Punisher Warzone comic book line. He started that particular title. But the story that he'll be most well known for is Vengeance of Bane. It's where he introduced Bane, you know, the guy who broke Batman's back. Just a pointless PR stunt. But Chuck Dixon was the guy who essentially created that character and introduced him to the comics world. Well, Chuck Dixon went on a number of right-wing media outlets, and he even did an interview with Milo Yiannopoulos. And of course, he sounded not much different than any other right-winger you've ever heard. John Romita Jr. is very well known. He was the artist who worked on Daredevil for a number of years. And he created a black character while working on that title named Shotgun. By the way, Shotgun was also featured in Chuck Dixon's first story arc on Punisher Warzone, which John Romita Jr. drew, by the way. But John Romita Jr. is also a self-professed conservative, too. He even called into Sean Hannity's show a couple of times. By the way, did I mention that John Romita Jr. also drew the Black Panther comic book for a while, and he even drew the Black Panther motion comic book? See, there's a good reason you don't see black characters being introduced in comic books very often, and when they are, they never get the exposure that their white counterparts do. There's a reason why black characters are often presented as stereotypes. These are the people who create the comics that you read. They created the storylines that have been used by the movie studios. And while none of them may be mouth-frothing racist, then again, neither is Richard Spencer or Jared Taylor. They all seem amiable enough. That is, until they tell you what their views on black people are. This is not about being some sort of media purist. Most white people subscribe to the tenets of white supremacy. Bill Maher should have taught you that. So, since they also control most of the media outlets and the content that comes from this media, unless you just turn off the TV, cover your eyes, and refuse to leave your home, it's going to be damned hard to avoid it. When you watch TV shows, read comic books, or whatever, you're consuming what these people produced. What I'm telling you is to be aware of this, and that you need to be planning how you're going to escape, not from reality, but escape from the fantasy lies that these white media types are presenting to you. The media you consume should come from like-minded people who respect you. And if that media doesn't exist, then damn it, make it. That's what the Chinese did. But black people want to be passive consumers. That's what we want. Our minds and our bodies have been put to sleep. We don't want to be businessman of the year. We'd much rather settle for being employee of the month. You see, creating media is hard. Consuming media is easy. To many of you, you're very eager to overlook all this because you just want some unencumbered escapism. You talk about this Black Panther movie like it's some sort of historic event. Like this is up there with the March on Washington or something. You're projecting all of this importance onto a movie that you didn't make, had nothing to do with the content of, you won't be getting a penny from it, and it doesn't empower you at all. Rather, it ridicules you. But you talk about it like it's the second coming of Malcolm X. You use words to describe it that have no place in this discussion. Words like progress and influential, and my personal favorite, some of you have even been so bold as to say the word accomplishment. This is an accomplishment. Accomplishment? Okay then. When Dr. John Henrik Clarke talked about the Million Man March 20 years ago, a lot of black people didn't like it. He criticized that march, and principally he criticized Louis Farrakhan. He told the truth about Farrakhan, and people didn't like that. Well, my response to the Negro nerds who call this Black Panther movie an accomplishment for black people is the same as Dr. Clarke's response to those who complained about him 20 years ago. He said that the Million Man March was an accomplishment, but an accomplishment for whom and for what? Yes, the Black Panther movie is an accomplishment, but for whom and for what? Whatever success this movie may or may not enjoy is an accomplishment for Disney, not you. Stan Lee gets to brag about how his IP made so much money and came to mean so much to black people. You don't get to brag about that. That's not your accomplishment, it's theirs. What on earth are you Negro nerds getting so happy about? Because while you're having nerdgasms, you don't even see the way the white media is manipulating you. The goal of this movie is to make African people look like the bar scene from Star Wars, and they have. This is making African people to be exotic, and we are anything but that. Black people, the African is the original man. It's the white man who's exotic. This movie is not normalizing anything. This is sending a clear signal that black people are bizarre. That's what this movie is meant to say loud and clear. Everything about black people is weird. Because the more I hear you guys equivocate and make excuses for this movie, the more clear it becomes that there is no line for you. There's no limit that the white media can cross before you say that you're ready to walk away from their TV shows, comics, video games, movies. There's nothing that they can do that you would look at and say, that's the last straw. You can't even bring yourselves to be honest about a freaking movie. White supremacy bought you off with a single film because Black Panther gets to stand next to a popular studio enterprise. And you're paying them to make you look ridiculous. Black people tell themselves 100 lies before they get out of bed in the morning, and the first lie that they tell themselves is that they're not in a war of survival, one that we are losing. Your white counterparts, on the other hand, they clearly see themselves as being at war with you, and everything around them are instruments of that war, especially media. They play video games and read comic books and watch sci-fi shows and movies, and then they practice white supremacy. They try to pressure television stations or movie studios into not featuring black people as the leads on the TV shows or the movies, not that the studios need much convincing on that front. They talk friendly while they're in front of you, and they practice war against you the moment your back is turned. You go to science fiction conventions, and You see even the science fiction writers talking all kinds of racialist talk, just all sorts of soft shoe white supremacist dogma. And you don't even notice. I keep telling you, you need to be not just wary, but outright suspicious of the people who make the media that you consume. But apparently, scrutiny is taking a holiday. You get butthurt because you think my telling you to be aware and discriminating in what you consume means that I'm presenting Black Panther as your B1 litmus test. Let me tell you Negro nerds and comicoons something. I don't give a damn whether you see that reeking pile of white horse crap film or not. I don't care if you play every video game that's ever been made, or if you memorize every line from every issue of X-Men, Superman, and Black Panther combined, or if you've seen every episode of Star Trek ever filmed. My question to you is, do you see that as a momentary escape, or do you see the media that you consume as your reason for living? Because based on what I've seen, it's the latter, not the former. Yes, we all need diversions. We're humans. Too much time on any one thing is not healthy mentally. But you know what? That also goes for escapism, too. Too much time spent on your comic books and your video games and your fantasy sci-fi movies, that's not healthy either. But are you going to lie to me and tell me that you don't have enough digital toys, entertainment, and diversions already? Is that the reason you got mad with me? The reaction that I got from many of you, you would have thought that you had just gotten off a 25-year stay on a desert island, and that here I was taking away your last chance to see a movie before you die. Now I get it, some of you were raised by hood rats. And that explains some of the responses that I got, like, you know, Professor Truth, he ain't your daddy. If you want to see the movie, go see it. He ain't your daddy. Really, a lot of you don't know who your fathers are. And to use a line like that, you ain't my daddy, really? That's the mentality that you have. A response like that isn't just juvenile, it's infantile. But this is the kind of responses that we saw. He ain't gonna tell you what to do. Nobody was telling you what to do, stupid. What I was doing was telling you the truth about what you're doing. Nobody's trying to make you do anything. That's the first thing you Negro nerds and comicoons need to get through that cinder block on your shoulders. Nobody's trying to stop you from doing a damn thing. You go ahead and you make sure that Disney keeps on making money, and you also make sure that the white media is emboldened to do even more black denigration fare, because you seem to think that Disney is some sort of small independent studio and not the biggest, most influential media titan on the planet. Do you think that Disney's putting this movie out there simply because they like black people? They're putting it out there as their trial balloon. They've already seen that black people sat on their hands after Precious and The Blind Side and Lee Daniels crap in the Medea movies. Now they're like, okay, it's time to go ahead and bring back the hardcore black denigration imagery. And you don't even see it. All they got to do is put a superhero in there, and you go, ooh, we got a big budget, and Patrick Boseman, they got some CGI. See, they treating us just like them white folks. See, we in. We're accepted now. We're in. These are supposed to be the smart people who come to my channel, and this is the mentality they've got. You want to argue that watching a movie that stereotypes us doesn't make you a coon, when that wasn't even the point that I was making. But while you brought up the subject, though, I'll tell you right now, you're half right. Seeing that garbage in and of itself, watching the Black Panther movie doesn't make you a coon necessarily. But to be so vociferous in its defense because someone dares to tell you what's wrong with it, that does make you a coon. And if you were one of the idiots who decided that you were going to take issue with what I said, congratulations, you got a first-class ticket on the coon train. Defending the work of a studio who we routinely deride as racist, that makes you a coon. Some of the online scuttlebutt has focused on the recently released Black Panther poster that shows Patrick Boseman sitting on a throne, and some people have compared it to the iconic photo of Huey Newton. Now, of course, you can tell that these were some white supremacists who apparently just Google Black Panther. I mean, you put in the word Black Panther into a Google search engine, first thing you're going to get is Huey Newton sitting on the goddamn throne, so it's obvious that, Patrick Boseman's picture would be close by. And yet, it's that addle-brained comparison like that helps black people to think that this movie's all right. Oh, there were some white people bitching about that picture going, ooh, you see Black Panther, this is Huey Newton. You see some white people bitching about it and you think, they hate this movie, so there must be something right with it. They hate the name Black Panther because who the hell originated it? These white people bitched and complained about Blade. They wanted to know why Wesley Snipes was killing mostly white vampires. They make up any reason to complain about black people. This movie isn't special. They bitched and complained about Obama, and some of us thought that because Reverend Wright made a couple of statements about America that were true, we thought, well, if this is Obama's pastor, he must be okay. By the way, how did that turn out? How did that work out for us? White people complained and bitched about Obama for 8 years, so Obama did right by us, right? White people complaining about something that black people do doesn't mean that it must be right. It just means that white people are still being white people. Though none of you seems to ever mention that the vast majority of white people liked the Black Panther trailer, and that these good white folks totally glossed over the fact that there were plate lips and grass skirts. None of the white people wanted to mention that. Nobody wanted to actually have to say that. They just pretended like they didn't see it, even though everyone saw it. You see, white people don't have to celebrate the racist imagery because they never do. They don't celebrate the racist imagery. They like to go ahead and be oblique about it. Oh, we loved The Blind Side. Yeah, I'm sure it's not because it was some big dumb Negro. Oh, we loved The Green Mile. It was a good story, well told. Yeah, the fact that you got John Coffey as the big dumb Negro whose only ability is to perform tricks for white people helped to rehabilitate Tom Hanks' sex life. And of course, he is comfortingly killed in the end, so the white people are like, good, all that power will never be put to use for black people. That white people were comforted when John Coffey dies in the end. So white people have always mastered the art of praising things indirectly. They're not going to sit there and point to, ooh, plate lips and grass skirts. Yep, that's how those niggers are. They won't praise that part of the movie. They'll just praise everything else, because that's how they always promote white supremacy in the media. They never admit to the racist stuff that they actually like. They sit there and say that it's something else. Same way that when they put down a TV show or put down a black person, they don't say it's because you're black. They say, well, it's Obama's policies that we don't like. Yeah, right. Pull my other leg, why don't you? Well, it wasn't Malcolm X's skin color we didn't like. It's the fact that he said the white people are devils. Yeah, right. You remember when Luke Cage debuted on Netflix? I watched a number of online reviews from non-black people. An interesting thing about all these non-black people who were reviewing the Luke Cage series, they all said the same thing. They said that they started off their reviews by saying, Luke Cage is a black superhero. And that's what they would say. Well, okay, well, first of all, Luke Cage, he's a black man with superpowers. That's what they would all say. He's black. He's black. Did they think that nobody would notice that Mike Coulter is a black man? Is that why they kept saying that? Because they never described Matt Murdock as a white man. They never called Jessica Jones a white woman. But when the lead of the show is a black man, they have to go ahead and say that he's black, even though this is television. The whole point of TV is so you can see him. You see, obviously, this is racialist code speak for them. When they say that he's a black man, black is code for bad. This is a bad thing. This is a black man. So this is not really a good thing. He's black. Now with Black Panther, notice how you don't see them calling him black? And they love to mention how this is important to black people. You got white folks sitting here going, oh, this movie is very important to black people. African Americans, surely, this is something, a point of pride for them. This is an accomplishment. Gee, I'm seeing white people sitting here actually pretending like they care what black people think. Doesn't that seem just a little strange to you? Because they damn sure never do any other time. White people love elaborate jokes. I was telling you guys about this, and a lot of you clearly didn't listen. White people love the kind of prank that takes a long time for the payoff, because they get a kinky thrill out of stringing the mark along. They pat the mark on the back, tell the mark how smart they are, watch as the mark eats this up and thinks they got a friend, when in truth they got an enemy who is preparing the mother of all double crosses for them. White people love that kind of thing. They love that kind of long con cruelty. They love that. They get off on it. To them, they get their psychological jollies by, I know something this idiot doesn't know. And when you see white people, the very same white people who have never been boosters of anything having to do with black people, they didn't praise red tails, and they damn sure had nothing good to say about the birth of a nation. And yet these same black people, all of a sudden, we know that this movie's important to black people. Let me tell you something. There was a guy, and I forget what his name was. He said that when it comes to TV critics or just movie critics in general, they never mention what the audience allegedly thinks unless it's something that the movie critic or movie reviewer himself agrees with. They never sit there and say, oh, such and such a movie, audiences loved it, unless they loved it too. They never ever talk about the audience unless it's something that they themselves want to be able to say, but they want to hide behind, well, it's the audiences you see. I'm just telling you what the audiences think. So when white people sit here with this cheap, phony praise for Black Panther, you think it's because they like black people. When they sit here and say, oh, this is so important to black folks, they have never said phrases like that before, and they damn sure never supported anything that they thought was important to black people, but they're supporting this. I mean, you need it spelled out for you in boxcar letters that you're being punked? They never get happy about a black character. Unless it's a slavery movie, or a black dysfunctional mess like Precious, Blindside, Midnight. White people conveniently overlook the racist tropes in those movies too, But here these white people are getting happy over this movie, and they're careful to avoid talking about the stereotypical imagery. See, they don't want you to look and go, man, these white folks really are getting over on us. They're instead saying, oh, how important for black people. They know how to ridicule you with a smile on their face. They are the masters of the backhanded compliment. At a time when white racism, anti-black bigotry is higher than it's been in decades, white people are praising this. A movie named Black Panther, and they're praising it, and you don't see the scam? As black people, we keep making up these little games we have to play with ourselves so we don't have to change anything, especially not our viewing habits. I understand white people who defend their entertainment so viciously. It's because white people don't have heroes. They have warmongers, slave mongers, and perverts as their historical representatives. White people need Captain Kirk because they don't have any honorable white men in the real world who they can look up to. White supremacy gave them everything, so they are desperately trying to figure out how to prove themselves in a world where everything's been handed to them. But it keeps failing because white supremacy caters to white people. They don't have to lift a finger for anything. They're told that they were great simply because they were born. They're empty and hollow, and they know it. So since they don't have any real-world accomplishments, they have to make up white men with character since they've never met one and will never be one. Luke Skywalker is real to them because white people understand that their position in the world is artificial and fake. So it makes sense that they would gravitate to made-up characters whose position is also equally fake. Luke Skywalker fills a psychological need for white people, same as Rocky does. Rocky Balboa feeds a psychological need for white people. White people's imaginary heroes overcome mediocre obstacles. Black people's heroes, on the other hand, overcame white people. They have to make up heroes and pretend that these figments of their imaginations took on big challenges. Our heroes actually did. Our heroes challenged the most powerful, vile, and corrupt forces on Earth. White people. Now, white people are ready to fight in a heartbeat for their entertainment because just as white supremacy is a made-up lie, so is white courage and white character. What white people try to portray as their idea of substance was given to them by political propagandists and later on by Hollywood. So it makes total sense that white people would get furious when you tell them the truth about their entertainment. But black people, who are getting furious as hell over real remarks, true remarks, facts being given about comic books and movies, that's a little harder to understand. See, when it comes to entertainment, white people don't have to overlook the insults and the digs that movies and TV make at them because 99% of the time, unless it's a Spike Lee movie, the entertainment that white people see has nothing but praise for them. The media that the kind of content that the white media produces is meant to validate, honor, and magnify white people. White people never have to make up excuses for what they see. They never have to excuse away any insults that a movie levels at them because 99.9% of the time there are none. But look at what people have had to say, the rationalizations and the contortions that they've had to go to simply to try to ignore, well, not ignore because look at the comments, they ain't been ignoring anything I said, but to try to find a way to talk around the facts that I laid out. As black people, we're used to getting our standards from white people. I guess that's the problem. So when a black person says, these are the boundaries of what's acceptable and that what's outside of this is wrong, we're not going to listen to him. When somebody says, these white folks have crossed the line, well, unless the white folks agree with them, unless I can find a white person that agrees with you, no. These are the same white people who were excoriating Nate Parker for Birth of a Nation, calling it nothing but an empty polemic, anti-white propaganda, racialist feel-good nonsense for black people, a complete distortion of history, just empty racializations. That's what they said about the Birth of a Nation. They wrecked Nate Parker's career for telling the truth about slavery and about white people. And yet these same white people are going gaga over this movie, and it never occurred to you to ask why. Of all the things these geeks talk about, notice how not one of them talks about the imaginary technology of Wakanda. You see, with Iron Man, it's all about repulsors and Hulkbuster armor and what else. With Black Panther, there's nothing. So the most technologically advanced society on Earth, but apparently none of Wakanda's technology ever captured anyone's imagination. Cute. If I say Ghost in the Shell, what's the first thing you think about? Thermoptic camouflage. I talk about the Matrix, what's the first thing you think about? Bullet time. Or you think about the fact that they have their cute little screens where symbols show in front of you instead of actual images. I talk about Star Trek, you think about the holodeck, phasers, photon torpedoes. But we talk about Wakanda, you know, because apparently it's so technologically advanced, and what do you think about? Nothing. So much for how the technological advancement is what people are coming to see. Yeah, that's what makes it so important to you. Yeah, the technology. T'Challa is supposed to be such a great character. That's another one you guys like to hide behind, but you can't tell me about any incredible stories that have been written about Black Panther. There are no Black Panther storylines that you say, oh, this storyline was so iconic. See, with Batman, you can point to Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns and Batman Year One. You can point to Nightfall. You can point to a lot of that stuff. With Superman, you can point to whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow. You know, you can point to those stories. But with Black Panther, you can't point to any stories and say, oh, this was just iconic. This was just great. You can't point to that. You have to stretch farther and farther to justify supporting this. And then you turn around and have the nerve to say that, oh, criticizing this movie, oh, brother, that's a stretch. No, you're the one stretching. I lay out the facts. You're the one who has to go halfway around the freaking world to find anything defensible about it. Yeah, all you got to do, this is the lesson that white supremacy has learned from you Negro nerds. This is the lesson you taught to white supremacy and to white people, because this is how they operate. They look to see if you will give them license to come at you. You want to know why lynchings went on for so long? Because black people bought into white people's lies that, oh, you know, Jimmy over here, he hurt a white woman. Black people were so terrified of displeasing white people. We were trying to win some sort of respectability politics game with white people. We allowed them to lynch black people and claim that it was all fair and right and legal because we didn't want to have to tell white people that they were wrong. We were so busy trying to impress white people, we didn't see that that wasn't their game. They didn't give a damn about any laws being broken. This was about, let's see how many killings we can get away with before black people smarten up to the scam. And you see how long it took us to smarten up, now don't you? That's the game that white people love to play. Trick you into giving them permission to be racist. Trick you into giving them cover, and what will happen is they'll bash you over the head with it. And now what you've told to them, what you've revealed to them, what you've confirmed to them is all they have to do is make sure that they put a black video game, cartoon, or comic book character next to the racism, and you'll give them a pass. It will become immune to criticism. See, when you're a pale male and you watch some movie, especially a comic book movie, the whole point of it is to make you feel good about being a white guy. Look at this whole Spider-Man Homecoming movie. You got this Asian character in there, and I'm not throwing any sympathy his way, but he's like this fat kid, and they make sure that he puts on Spider-Man's costume, and they want to show him as being this overweight, bulbous character. Now, what kind of message does that send? The message that it sends is a non-white Spider-Man is ridiculous. So, do you think that you'll be seeing Miles Morales web-slinging through New York anytime soon? They just got through sending you a message, but a lot of you didn't get it. But the white guys did. That was reassuring for them. They pick up these unspoken signals loud and clear. That's how white supremacy has refined itself. They have refined themselves to the point now where they can deliver complex messages without having to say a word. A picture truly does speak 1,000 words under white supremacy because they refined the images and the messages behind those images to the point that they ain't even got to say it. Just putting up the picture gets the point across. And white guys don't just feel good when they see this. They get the message that they're supposed to feel better than those non-whites. This is why the non-whites in these movies, particularly the black characters, are presented as dimwits, coons, cowards, and buffoons. You need look no farther than the black character in the Transformers 5 trailers if you want confirmation for that. And why does Michael Bay think he can get away with this? Because there was no pushback when the two ghetto bots were introduced in the Transformers movies. You had Jazz in the first Transformers movie saying, "What's cracking, bitches?" He gets killed, Megatron just rips him in half and throws him to the side like a couple of toys. Black people didn't get bent out of shape about that. Loving the CGI and the flashy camera moves too much, I suppose. I'm not saying get out with a rifle on point and say, Michael Bay, we're gunning for you, but what I am saying is you need to see when people are making a mockery of you. Now, here's where the Negro nerds need to pay attention. When the white media puts out some escapist fantasy geared toward white males, everything in that movie is made to make them feel good about themselves. They don't have to talk themselves into it. They only see things that they like to see, because that's all that's being presented to them. You guys can't lie and say that you wanted to see plate lips and grass skirts. Are you going to lie and say that a Black Panther movie would have been less than you wanted unless they put plate lips and grass skirts in and spears? How many of you were clamoring for that? How many of you looked and said, yeah, this is definitely something we wanted? None of you asked for that, but you got it anyway. And now, in order to get your Black Panther movie, you got to take all this extra crap that you didn't ask for. Which one of you is willing to lie and say that you waited 50 years for a Black Panther movie because you just couldn't wait to see Africans running around with plate lips and grass skirts? Come on, who wants to go on the record for that? All the other stupidity that you were talking yesterday, you might as well take this one too. You see, white people never have to rationalize the things that they see in movies. They don't have to talk themselves into believing that this movie is okay, that it's not so bad. Do we need depictions of black superheroes? Sure we do. But not like this. That's the point I'm trying to get across to you. Everything in a Black Panther movie should make you feel good about being black. There's nothing that should be cringeworthy. There's nothing that should make you look and go, man, did they have to throw that in there? And when you see white people speaking in defense of this racist crap, that's how you know who it was geared toward. And it wasn't geared towards you. With the sole exception of Blade, whenever Hollywood shows black people in science fiction, fantasy, or any other escapist subgenre, there's always got to be some crap that they throw on top of it. A depiction of a black character in this escapist subgenre, he can never be shown as clean. They can never just have him presented as, you know, he's the guy who does all this amazing stuff and he has these great action set pieces and he comes out the other end clean as a rose, you know, as fresh as a rose. He's just amazing. No, they got to throw some dirt on top of it. There's got to be some effery put on it. Now, I know why white people do this crap, but why are black people covering for them? Because you're addicted, and your drug of choice is escapist media fantasies. Look, to a certain degree, yes, with most of the stuff that comes out of the white media, you have to overlook the bigotry that's behind it because it's coming to you from a bunch of racists. Okay, you got a point with that, but are you willing to concede that I've got a point that you deserve better than that? Well, actually, let me rephrase that. If you're somebody who makes excuses for this kind of stuff, this is exactly what you deserve. You don't deserve better than this. This is precisely what you ought to have. But for the rest of us who prefer our entertainment without the anti-black insults layered into it, we deserve better than this. You claim to be black first, but I make a rightful criticism of a comic book created by white people and you defend it like you made it? That means you invested psychologically into it. And since you enjoy sci-fi so much, perhaps I should recommend that you rewatch The Matrix. Particularly the part where Morpheus has to explain to Neo that most people can't see the Matrix because they depend upon it, and that they would fight to protect it. And for you hardcore geeks out there, you'll recall the exact word that Morpheus used, inured. He said that they were inured. He used that word to describe the mental state of the mindless masses who lived in the Matrix but didn't know it, and if you challenged it, they would protect it. For your information, inured means to accept something that is undesirable. White supremacy got to you early and programmed you to be susceptible to this stuff. And of course you're going to be angry at me because I'm telling you to rebel against your programming. And while we all like action, adventure, and acts of daring do, some of us want our escapism without the racist tropes. The studios that put this stuff out there, they do it so white people can get their jollies. And they knew that you would go for it, by the way, because you followed these comic books from your childhood. That's why you're fighting so hard against the truth. Like most white media, comic books condition you to think of white supremacy as not being evil. They show you make-believe depictions of a world without racism, at least without overt racism. You get to see characters over the course of months or even years who have regular interactions with each other, and why race doesn't seem to exist in this place. But that's no surprise. After all, aren't white people always saying, "We don't see color"? See, they're selling you the white people are colorblind lie. Poison in a candy coating. It's bad enough that you're not excoriating them, but by openly and boldly supporting this, you have now given them permission to do far worse. And you can mark my words on this, since you didn't mark everything else that I warned you about. Maybe you'll mark this. Their next anti-black media assault isn't going to be some black superhero from your childhood. And it won't be something that you'll be so easily able to dismiss either. You've given them the green light to go in on you. Look, a lot of kids grow up feeling alienated for a lot of reasons. Kids have trouble finding a place where they fit in, even among other children. So a lot of young people, a majority in fact, grow up not having a whole lot of friends. So their comic books, their cartoons, their favorite movies, these become their friends. You know, I've watched interviews where people who make media content, people like Quentin Tarantino and J. Michael Straczynski and others, that's the kind of thing that they said. They grew up basically without a whole bunch of friends, or they grew up under trying circumstances. And because of that, movies and TV became their friends because they didn't have any in the real world. They lived largely inside their own heads, or they lived largely inside of TV shows because that's all they had. Well, given how dysfunctional the black community has become the last 50 years, this situation is far worse for black children. So I guess it makes sense that we would see this violent reaction to someone saying, hey, there's something wrong with your friends. Well, let me tell you something. It's real simple. Either white supremacy is totally wrong or it's totally right. Either you want to knock it over or you want to protect it. You can't have both. Because you know what? The white supremacists, they're not looking to have both. They're not looking at black people and saying, well, you know, either we want to destroy black people or we want to harmoniously live beside them. They're like, oh, to hell with that. We want to destroy them. They're not looking for a middle ground. We have a sick media paradigm right now. And it must be totally changed, completely changed. Not just a few minor changes around the edges, not just a few alterations. We have to destroy this thing and build something else in its place, something that will bear no resemblance to the current paradigm. So you keep making excuses for the white media. To you, it's only a movie. And to them, it's war. You keep trying to hide inside of their fantasies that they presented to you. I'm sure that'll have a happy ending. Well, soon the time is going to come when they're going to get tired of presenting feel-good fantasies to you and things for you to mentally play with, and they're going to finally get around to what they've been waiting for. They're going to start to make the media hostile towards you because it's going to be part of programming white people that black people are weird, bizarre, strange, undesirable. And soon it will get to the point where you won't even be able to make excuses for it anymore. But the problem is, by the time you Negro nerds finally decide to stop hiding in the white media's fantasy world, most likely the white supremacists will have already killed you in the real one.